From the heart of Orlando, Florida, you are listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. And I'm your host, David Gornoski. Thank you for being with me here in this second hour of our live Mega Monday broadcast. We just had a wonderful time with the directors of the movie Hoaxed, which deals with how the news media ends up getting caught up in groupthink and manipulating the truth, often in the times in the service of the state and its need for endless war, endless spending, and endless personal division in our own neighborhoods. But on this program, we're about personhood. We're about nonviolence, which means non-aggression and non-vengeance. There's a place for self-defense, but we always want to root our things in protecting our families and respecting individual personal freedom. And that's the cornerstone of what made America great, and it's what's going to make us even better if we can get a better handle on it going forward in the future. But I'm here with my next guest, his name is William Binney, and he was the head of a tech program in NSA. He was also the star of a movie made about his life called A Good American, which was actually, it was a really great movie. It came out in 2015, and it dealt with how his work at the NSA could have thwarted the September 11 attacks if it was if the high officials in the NSA had actually acted on it. Mr. Binney, please, thank you for being on the program.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, I first saw your work on the movie A Good American, and I think I saw a few interviews before that, but tell us a little bit about that program that you were involved with that could have helped us stop 9/11 from happening.
The basic program was intended to solve the internal NSA problem where analysts were looking at collection, which was a lot less then than it is now on the fiber optic nets, the Internet, so that they were, in fact, at the time, they were being buried by all these communications they were looking at. It was just too much for them to deal with. So the whole point about the program we developed was to make it possible for them to deal with the massive volumes of data they were looking at. And the problem became one that we developed so that it would filter out and be legal so that we protected people's identity and only pulled in data that was relevant that we could show probable cause to maintain. So in other words, we were developing evidence of who was a bad guy at the same time and doing it all at fiber optic rates as data flowed by. So that meant we were basically pulling the needles out of the haystack and not taking in the haystack at all. But that didn't satisfy Dick Cheney or Bush, nor did it satisfy General Hayden at the NSA or Tenet at the CIA. Those were the four who got together and felt that the way we needed to do it was do bulk collection. And since in order for us to pull out the needles, we had to first be able to see everything. And once we could see everything, that meant you could capture it. So the first thing they removed was our filtering process,
right?
So that the data was no longer filtered. It was, they just took in everything. So that meant that our program was basically to solve the problem of volume for all the people all the analysts at NSA were trying to succeed at looking at data, meant that it was failing because there was no longer possible for them to filter out anything. Cheney wanted to see everything, and so therefore they took everything in. That meant, he grew up under Nixon, and so that meant he had the ability then to look at everybody in the country, and all of his political opponents, everyone. So, and that's basically the objective I think he had. For Hayden, it was a question of him being able to put together a larger and greater budgeted empire in terms of an agency. So for him, it satisfied that scratch. But basically, what it did was make our analysts there at NSA dysfunctional because they could no longer detect threats coming because there was just too much data, orders of magnitude much more data. And so they were that made them basically incapable of stopping any of the attacks. not just the attacks in the U.S., but anywhere in the world. So that was the other thing. Then the final thing they removed from that program that we put together was encryption. That was the part that when you if you were drawn into the system and you were not known to be a bad guy, one sort or the other, then all your identifying factors were encrypted so that nobody, even inside NSA, could tell who you were until you developed probable cause to include you in the illegal or criminal activity. Once that occurred, then we would decrypt you and then target you. So. And the final version so that was protecting the identities, not just of everybody anyway. So then the final thing they removed from our program, which also dealt with monitoring everything that was going on the network, so that we could see, and this was all done by software, by the way, so that it was run at the speed of light, basically. And so anybody coming into our network, where they went, what they did, how long they stayed, all of that was monitored by software. So that meant that no one could come in and do things like Edward Snowden did without us knowing that he did it and exactly what he did and when.
Okay.
But they removed that because they didn't want any management in NSA didn't want Congress to be able to come into their agency and see what they did with money or what programs they had that were failing or succeeding. So they removed that so that wouldn't be possible for Congress to do.
So now you resigned shortly after the September 11 attacks. I guess you were really disgusted with what you saw. So you basically built the architecture for what is now the system that is surveilling everything about Americans and everybody around the world, right?
That's correct, yeah.
But
it's all documented in the Edward Snowden material that came out, yeah. So that's why I included it as exhibits in the sworn affidavit I submitted to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals saying that the NSA was spying on and violating the constitutional rights of every U.S. citizen.
So, but you put in safeguards to try to protect innocent Americans so they're not going to be harassed and illegally surveilled and violating their Fourth Amendment rights, but they took those out, and you didn't like that. When you were building that, did you ever have a suspicion that they might do that, or did you think they were just going to be patriots?
No, I did. All my career in NSA was all a matter of abiding by the UCIT 18, which was the outcome of the Church Committee's report, and it basically it fundamentally focused on abiding by the constitutional rights of everyone. So I had that was drilled into us. We had to go to classes every year to go through that and listen to again and reinforce again what that meant. And so, I had no suspicion they were going to do that. But, when they did and I found out about it, it took me 2 weeks to get out of the agency. I was eligible to retire, by the way, so I retired quickly and just got out of there.
And now you're a whistleblower, and you've received a lot of blowback, it looks like, for your personal work to try to expose the abuse of freedom that your program ended up becoming.
Yes, and actually I was started blowing the whistle, if you want to call it that, in October of 2001 when I first found out about it, because at that point I said, obviously this is a violation of the constitutional rights of everyone, so I needed to advise. I see, as a part of the regulations required for you, if you are going to work for the U.S. government, you are required to report corruption, fraud, waste, abuse, and criminality of any sort. That's a requirement. You're required to do that by going to the Inspector Generals of the Departments of Defense, Justice, and all, and also by going to the intelligence committees, which is exactly what I started doing. And of course, that they didn't want that to happen because they were trying to keep it away from Congress. They didn't want Congress to know what they were really doing. They still don't. They still don't do that. They don't want anyone to know the procedures that they're actually going through and the massive amounts of content as well as metadata they're collecting on U.S. citizens. They simply don't want that known, and they'll deny it in any case. But I have pretty much the goods on them, so I've been putting that in legal papers in the courts.
Wow, it sounds like they really read their Jefferson, that they want to have no accountability. They must have read all the Federalist Papers. They studied Washington. Yeah. They read all of Common Sense, and they are just great patriots, and they know that they are one of the few people who can have basically unchecked power, no accountability to surveil everybody, and that'll just work out great for government, right? On the other side, I want to get into what your opinion is of the Russian hacks that happened and get into that on the other side of this break. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm speaking with Bill Binney, former head of the NSA tech programs that led to our mass surveillance programs we have today. He's blowing the whistle. We'll find out on the other side. Hi, this is David Gornoski, founder of A Neighbor's Choice. A Neighbor's Choice is sponsored by people just like you, making weekly or monthly contributions to support the development of this show, which is dedicated to introducing Jesus' personhood revolution to the broader public. Visit www.aneighborschoice.com, click on Contribute, and start your monthly pledge today. We appreciate your support.
Recapping now for you once again, an explosion underground in the garage section of the World Trade Center in New York City.
The first attack on the Trade Center in '93 was the first thing that woke everybody up in terms of the threat of terrorism.
We said, this is not a one-time event. There is a larger movement here, and they're planning on doing more.
The terrorists were burying themselves inside the ballooning communications network and the internet and the phones, and so we had to figure out who was communicating with whom and who were the terrorists, and that was the whole idea of the ThinThread program.
Of all the analysts, Bill was by far the most astute.
He was the person in the agency who knew the most about metadata.
It was pretty clear that we were building the most powerful analysis tool that had been developed in history to monitor basically the entire world.
This little research organization had the keys to NSA's future.
We let it run 24 to 36 hours. We discovered critical intelligence that had never been discovered by NSA. NSA's response completely shut the program down.
Does anybody even recognize what they have?
Oh my God, the whole tower collapsed. It is gone.
We would have caught the people. 9/11 would have been avoided.
They're taking data on every U.S. citizen in the country. That's not compatible with a democracy. It's like the Stasi on super steroids.
What's wrong with this picture?
9/11 is a gift to NSA. We're going to get all the money we need and then some.
It wasn't about making money. It was about protecting the country and the free world.
Let's find where the skeletons are, capture it all, and then bury the report as deep as possible.
The FBI decided to raid 4 people. Fabricated evidence to get a warrant. They were after all material that was related to ThinThread.
It was the largest failure in NSA history.
You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice Radio, and what you just heard was a trailer for the movie A Good American, which is about the whistleblower, Mr. William Binney, who I have on with me right now, live here on A Neighbor's Choice. And the story that we were talking about in the movie Explorers was how Mr. Binney created the architecture to be able to find terrorists like Osama bin Laden, but he had created it in a way that would filter out the noise and go after the chatter that was related to suspicious terrorist-related people. But unfortunately, the NSA higher-ups wanted it completely unfiltered, unencrypted, and fully available for everybody to be surveilled. It's the difference between laser targeting the bad guys versus just carpet bombing everybody with violation of their Fourth Amendment. And so Mr. Binney is here with us now. And that was a good movie. I think you did a good job. Did it convey the message that you wanted to convey?
Yeah, pretty much so. I mean, it captured the major points that were important to get across, and especially the idea that the collecting and looking at and analyzing the data from the entire world was not a problem anymore. That with the new technologies, all of that was possible to do. Right.
And your website is whistleblower.org. That's whistleblower.org. And I wanted to get into the kind of controversy that's been plaguing us for a couple years now about the story about Russia hacking the election, and the news media has said that it is completely, basically, dogmatic truth that the Russian government was involved with the leaking of the DNC emails. Is that correct from your perspective?
Well, that's their allegation, but it's a total fabrication. It's a provable fabrication. I mean, it's very clear that the data was in fact not leaked, but it was the latest information that we came up with, by the way, which the FBI should have done anyway, and they didn't do a proper job. Okay, and if you went to the WikiLeaks files and looked at the files that they published, which were the late May leaks on the Hillary Clinton and the DNC emails, those files clearly show, by looking at the forensics of it, internally in there, they have it's like a timestamp of the last last time the file was modified. And if you went through, we looked through the first, about 500 files, and we found out that all the times for all the last modifications were even numbers. Well, I mean, your time, if you timestamp something, you have an equal chance of making it end in an odd number or end in an even number. But all of them ended in even numbers. Well, so as a mathematician, which I am, I start calculating the random probability of that happening just randomly. And it happens that each time you have a timestamp, it has a 1 chance in 2 of being even or odd. Simply, that's the only possibility. So 500 in a row, all being even, the probability randomly of all of those turning out to be even is like 1 chance in 2 to the 500th power. Or to put it in a base 10, which most people think about, then it's 1 in 10 to the roughly 150th power. In other words, there's 1 chance out of a 1 followed by 150 zeros of that being random. So it basically says this is not random. Okay, well, what did this? Well, there are file modification programs that do that, and they are basically file format, or file allocation table formats, and that's like a FAT format. And what it does is when it goes through and does a update or download to a disk or a thumb drive, it modifies the times to the nearest even number. So that implies that the entire DNC files about Hillary and the DNC were downloaded to a thumb drive or some CD-ROM type storage device.
So
which meant, quite frankly, that from there on it was transferred to WikiLeaks physically, not electronically. And then, of course, WikiLeaks published it, and they also did that with the Podesta emails, and we know they didn't occur at WikiLeaks simply because the other files, there are 3 out of 6 of the files, batch files, that they have that have the FAT format. The early ones have a FAT format. The later ones with Podesta and so on do not. And so, therefore, we directly infer that WikiLeaks did not induce that timing into the system.
But, sir, the Free Press, they've told me that the 14 of the intelligence agencies all say Russia hacked those emails.
Well, I mean, I basically challenged that, and I have yet to hear anything back from any of them to contradict anything I've said.
Have you been able to speak with anybody in government, like the CIA director? Didn't you speak with Mike Pompeo?
Yes, I did. Yes.
And what did he?
Down there, and he had 2 technical people there listening and asking questions about me, technically about how it worked, and I told them, and they had nothing to say beyond it.
So where did it go? Is there anybody else still looking at your data?
When I was there leaving, he asked me if I would be willing to talk to the FBI or the NSA, and I said sure. But I told him I would not assist them in violating the constitutional rights of the U.S. citizens.
So
and I haven't heard anything back.
Is there any indication that President Trump knows about your claims and your data analysis, that there's no way this was a hack?
Yes, there is. In fact, he was the one, he suggested that Director Pompeo get in contact with me to learn the facts about Russiagate.
So is he persuaded of your case, or is he just kind of ambivalent?
The president, I'm quite sure the president believes what I've been telling him.
So why is everybody in his administration still saying Russia hacked the emails?
I mean, there's a bureaucratic reason for doing that. If this is their agency and they own it, and they do, then you've got to stand up for them, so you don't make them look like they're silly idiots,
Right, but if you're making people look like silly idiots, but you are risking nuclear Holocaust war...
I understand that. And you and I look at it the same way.
Right.
These people don't. I mean, they're bureaucrats.
So they don't think nukes are real? Or, I mean, what do they think about the nuclear war? Is that just a game to them? They don't even think that's a possibility?
Well, look at what they did with 9/11. When you take a program that would have done all the necessary things and pulled out all the needles necessary to stop 9/11, and you kill it in favor of something that's going to cost thousands of times more for the money. In other words, I've been saying all along, they've traded the security of the people of the United States and the free world for money. And when you do that, that means you don't respect human life. That's the way I view that.
So what's going to come of this? You're saying there's no evidence at all that there was a hack, and yet half of America believes this is what happened.
No, the evidence is there was not a hack.
Right.
The evidence shows that it implies directly that it was downloaded to storage.
Well, could it be a Russian hacker that was inside the DNC that took a thumb drive?
Well, okay, but then, I mean, and I think Hillary Clinton had somebody working for Uma Abedin or somebody who was, in fact, a spy from Pakistan, I believe it was. But, certainly that person would have been possible. But again, it gets back to the point, it wasn't a Russian hack.
So half of the country believes that there was a hack, and about 100% of the mainstream media says it was a hack. What's happening? Why are they? How come there's no coverage on your data? This should be the biggest breaking story in around the whole world media. Anybody that doesn't want nuclear war anybody with common sense or just truth telling. Right?
Yeah, but you can understand the human nature here says it's really hard to eat a lot of crow, especially after you've been harping on something for 2 years. And, to eat crow in the end is kind of a bitter pill to swallow, so to speak. But,
I mean, has WikiLeaks even indicated that it wasn't hackers that gave them the data? Or, I mean, do they have...
I mean... Craig Murray, the former ambassador to Uzbekistan, British ambassador, met with somebody on a person on the campus of the American University who was involved in the transfer of data to WikiLeaks. And there's some other indications that, like, for example, an illicit phone call recording of Cy Hirsch implied certain things that the FBI knows who did it. And they know that it was not a hack. So, I mean, and they're not telling the truth. That's what I told Director Pompeo. I said the intelligence agencies are not telling you and the president the truth about what's going on here.
So I don't understand how people's own ego is so fragile that they can't even correct their assessment, and they'd rather risk nuking the whole world rather than saying, sorry, we got it wrong. That's what you're saying here, it sounds like.
Well, what the real motive is to create a new Cold War so they can swindle us out of another few $1 trillion. That's really the objective of these people.
Well, obviously, Russia is not a friendly government. At least their people are friendly, but their government is hostile, right? I mean, would you agree with that assessment?
I would say that there's a greater chance they certainly would do things that would. To be to their benefit, for sure.
Sure.
But, whether or not they would be openly hostile, I don't think so. They've been helping us out a lot on a lot of the terrorist stuff. I mean, they told us about the two fellows who were who did the bombing in Boston. They told us about them. People don't remember that, but that's exactly what happened. I mean, they told us that those people were coming in and that they're being trained by the Chechens. And so on. So I don't see them as being totally hostile. I certainly see that President Trump going over and talking to them would open the door, and maybe we could have détente again.
Well, it seems like if the White House could publish this information you're saying in a press conference or something, maybe that would open up a conversation to have a more honest assessment of how those emails were released by WikiLeaks. and that perhaps we could have freedom or at least a little more peace.
Yes, that's right. No, I agree. And in fact, but I would point out that neither Mueller or any of the intelligence committees or any of the judiciary committees in the House or Senate have called me to testify to anything. None of them. Now that tells you something, doesn't it, about our political process also. I call it basically the need for plausible deniability. Mm-hmm. Because if somebody goes in there and tells them what's really going on, then they can't deny that they knew it, and they have to do something about it. That's the whole point. So they really are after plausible deniability, and they don't want to hear anything from anybody except from each other.
Now, if we have a free press, how come no journalist has picked up on your? I guess there's some media, but in terms of NBC, ABC, these are free press. They tell this every day. We are free. We are free journalists. We go to Columbia School of Journalism, and we want the truth. And they do these big Washington Post ads in the Super Bowl about democracy dies in darkness. Well, here you are coming into the light, revealing that there's no way there's any technical possibility that the emails that were released to WikiLeaks came through a hack, that they were a thumb drive. Why would there not be one reporter in the Washington Post or the New York Times who would say, hey, can I just investigate this a little bit? Has there been anything?
No. But they called me a conspiracy theorist. And the only channel that ever asked me to come and talk to them was, RT. And so when I went there, they pointed out about all the people attacking me and calling me a conspiracy theorist. And what was my response to that? And I said, very simply put, that just demonstrates the weakness of their argument. They have no basis of facts backing them up, and so the only thing they can do is throw labels at people. So that's basically your free press. What you're talking about is a free press. That's what they've reduced themselves to. Label throwing at anybody who doesn't agree to the general theme they want to push.
Well, you would think there's somebody that went to journalism school who wants the biggest story of the decade. They would want to go on this, and if they were a free entity, not aligned to the state like all those other countries, right? Yep. All those other countries, they've got corrupted free press. We're the land of the free. So you'd think someone in there would want to break the biggest story and investigate your claims and give them a fair analysis, huh?
Well, I do know one fellow who worked for The Nation that was basically ostracized because of what he did a good article. And because of that, he was dismissed. Dismissed?
Fired? Wow.
Yep. And that's the reaction that the mainstream media got. That's what they did. They pressure people. You can see what's happening in the university is the extension of that. It's the same thing. It's no different. They're just trying to. The whole thing is to suppress any questioning of anything. You are to believe exactly what we are telling you, no more, no less, and don't question anything.
Folks, we're speaking with William Binney, former NSA tech director who built the architecture for what is now currently surveilling everything you say, everything you do, every email you send, every text message you send, everything you've done when you were in high school, college, every Facebook message. They collect it all. He tried to design it in a way that would not have that kind of unlimited power, but that's what they are doing now. And he's showing and explaining that there's no technical possibility for there to be a Russian hack at the bottom of the WikiLeaks release. On the other side, we're going to get into, with Mr. Binney, what we can do with this information. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gornoski. We'll see you in a moment. And welcome back. Welcome back. I'm your host, David Gornoski, and I'm speaking with the former NSA tech director, Mr. William Binney, formerly of the NSA. He built the architecture for what became the massive surveillance program that now currently collects everything we do. And he just got done basically challenging the whole framework of CNN's existence. This is like a God is dead moment for CNN if Mueller is wrong, right, Binney? Mr. Binney?
Well, I mean, they've been certainly chiming the righteousness of Mueller all along, and, I mean, like I say, it's hard to eat a lot of crow, especially the longer you shout something out that's wrong, the bigger the crow grows.
I thought Mr. Mueller was the founder of the Boy Scouts of America.
Mr. Mueller has been using the Stellar Wind program to spy on U.S. citizens and actually use it against them in a court of law without them knowing it. Since 2001, he's been doing that. So, I mean, he's no saint here by any means.
So can you give me any insight? I don't understand why these people would do this if they've read the Constitution, if they believe in American rule of law, they know what Jefferson intended. Do they think that Jefferson was a fool? I mean, would they have tried to do a special investigation on Mueller? I mean, on Jefferson or Washington or something if they were I mean, I don't understand this. This is totally alien to the concept of American liberty.
I guess I can quote. I was on Al Jazeera TV once with the former head lawyer at the NSA when he approved. He was the one who helped approve, along with Hayden, the opening up and doing exactly what they're doing, spying on U.S. citizens. And I called it basically. I said, to me, it meant that this was the founding. This is the this is basically treason against the founding principles of our country. And his answer to that question or that statement was, Mr. Binney's opinion is the four horsemen of the apocalypse are upon us. That's all he said. He didn't address the legality of it. He didn't do anything. So basically he was admitting to the fact that it's going on. But we shouldn't be afraid, okay, because, we are not the Nazis, we're not the KGB, we're not Stasi, we're not evil people, we're good guys, we only do good things and believe us.
Right.
That's the attitude those people have.
I guess they never read Solzhenitsyn. It says the line between good and evil cuts through the human heart. Every one of us has to deal with the proclivity to evil. I don't care what nationality or country you're from or what ideology, to be given full access to everything anybody's ever said. Why would anybody want that? I mean, it's almost like a caricature. It sounds like something out of Lord of the Rings, Like,
yeah, I think I've pretty well got that answer too. I mean, the whole point is they want that because that gives them power over everyone. That's fundamentally the ability to leverage anyone in the world now. This is power over all members of the parliaments of every government in the world. Power over every celebrity and anybody else in the world that they want. They have that power with this knowledge. It's like J. Edgar Hoover on super steroids.
And they have every access. What about encryption apps like Signal and stuff? They can get into that stuff too, probably, right?
Yep. And those companies, of course, are also participating with the government in the PRISM program, so they help them share the data.
What about the argument by a lot of people on left and right that say, well, if you have nothing to hide, then don't worry about it. You're only good people. We don't care. Only bad people would care about them having everything I've ever said since I was 1 year old.
Yeah,
right?
That's a great quote from Joseph Goebbels.
Is that who said that?
You have nothing to hide. You have nothing to fear. That's a great quote from Joseph Goebbels.
So with that kind of unlimited power, what can Americans do about it if we have any sense about continuing the preservation of liberty? It sounds like what they want to do, are they going to use this like to blackmail anybody who wants to do anything different? Anybody that wants liberty?
They used it already against the Tea Party and the Occupy group, and also they used it against they used the IRS. The IRS, by the way, has a view into all this data too. They can see
everything you've ever said too in the Stellar Wind?
Yep, that's right. They have direct access to that database with no oversight whatsoever.
What about the EPA?
I don't believe they do, but any of the intelligence agencies in the intelligence community, all 16 of them do. They all do now. So that's what Obama opened up to. He opened that up to everybody. But I mean, it's they even in my view they used it against also Elliot Spitzer because Elliot was going after the bankers on Wall Street for defrauding people, which they were, defrauding people out of money with those, with claims about the mortgage packages that they were selling people, and what they were claiming was a false characterization of what it really was. And so he was going after them for defrauding people.
Now, wait a second, Mr. Binney. The banks on Wall Street, those are private companies. What do they have to do with the intelligence agencies? What would they have access to their information?
When you have your bankers are in trouble and being attacked, you have to defend them. So that's what political parties do.
We're listening to Mr. Binney explain things that you don't hear on the news media, and this may be shocking for many people, but this is a man who was involved with the NSA on the inside for many years and built the architecture they're using, so I think he knows a little bit about what he's talking about. On the other side, we're going to get into what we can do. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gornoski. We'll see you in a moment.
Hi, this is David Gornoski, founder of A Neighbor's Choice. A Neighbor's Choice is sponsored by people just like you, making weekly or monthly contributions to support the development of this show, which is dedicated to introducing Jesus' personhood revolution to the broader public. Visit www.aneighborschoice.com, click on Contribute, and start your monthly pledge today. We appreciate your support.
A Neighbor's Choice Radio is back for our final segment, and we are in a fight for the soul of human civilization on this program. This is a program where we meet people, misfits, innovators, dissidents, people who are contrarian to the generic garbage media that you watch on TV. That's what we do on this program. We get to the truth because that's what is important in life. And so as we have this final segment, I'm joined with Mr. William Binney, former NSA tech director, who has really been skewering a lot of sacred cows. But before we do that, we're going to hear from local poet Jordan Lanphier.
Oh me, oh my, why, oh why do they spy? When I call this or that guy, they have every call monitored and filed. How can I protect my child when I feel naked and defiled? A ban from Twitter abounds. They close down your PayPal, freeze your bank accounts. Never question their sacred cows. Holy cow, you become the clown, the misfit, the outside, while you sit inside the prison town. The blacklist frown they paint on your face, a smear campaign so you can be erased. No hands are raised for a saving grace. I thought he was a saint. I guess he's just a monster snake. The media always seems to win the day. The false narrative gets set and the crowd is swayed. To the printed, out of thin air dollar they pray. Do or say nothing. That is all that is wanted. You are a sheep and you work for me. You are not supposed to think. What is in the folders, give it to me. You will resign within 3 weeks. I don't want to hear a peep. You have a beautiful family, and I'd hate to see that ruined because you were weak. Be afraid to be quiet. You can always speak, for the truth shall set you free.
Mr. Binney.
True words.
Mr. Binney, you're a patriot, and if we had listened to you, it sounds like we could have kept those two towers standing in the World Trade Center there.
Yes, and all the other terrorist attacks since then and before.
And instead, we've got a bunch of people who sound like anarchists running amok, making a mockery of everything that it means to be a constitutional republic. What do we do?
Yeah. Well, that's correct, and they're basically laughing all the way to the bank because they're making an awful lot of money. Wars are very productive, very productive for a very few people. So I mean, it's a matter of them scraping in all the money at the expense of others who have to basically die for that to happen.
So how have you been able to stay safe in all of this?
I basically have evidence against the government for attempting to, I call it, it's evidence to charge them with the malicious prosecution. Because they attempted that 3 times, fabricating data 3 times in a row. And finally, I just said, hey, look, I've got all this data on you. You take me to court, I'm going to charge you with malicious prosecution and present the evidence in court. So come on, let's go. And I haven't heard from them since.
So
that's our Department of Justice doing this. So I now call them the Department of Just Us. And I'm not included, nor are you.
So they want to go into Venezuela now. I guess there's a lot of oil there. So anybody that wants to create alternative energy sources that are free market oriented, that actually work, are they going to be recipients of this surveillance state?
Or in some way be impeded in progress, yeah. Through some means, like for example, denying to the Tea Parties, denying them 501c3 status till after the election.
So it sounds like we're dealing with little wannabe gods here. So what do we do here? We are neighbors here all across this country, 300 million plus people. What do we possibly do against these wannabe gods?
Well, it's the first thing you have to do is fire them all in one way or the other. So in other words, you go to the ballot box, and if you are voting for somebody, you have to check out their voting record. Did they vote for the Patriot Act? Did they not stand up and oppose this and try to stop it? And in fact, you can look at the entire Congress now, and I don't know any of them that have ever stood up to stop this. For example, the first people briefed into this program, the NSA programs and the CIA programs, were the gangs of 4. That's the chair and ranking members of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. Now, at the time, in 2001, that meant Porter Goss was the chair, and Nancy Pelosi was the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee. So that when she became Speaker, she had said that impeaching George Bush is off the table. The reason why she said that was very simple. She was culpable in these programs. So if she told George he was going to be impeached, then he could turn around and say, well, you need to include yourself in that because you're a part of this. That's how they co-opted them in. So they did that with those 2, and they also did it with Shelby and Graham, I believe it was, were in the Senate committee. They were the first briefed into the program, and they did that, I think, on the 4th of October of 2001.
We have 1 minute.
From then on, they've known about it.
So we have 1 minute to go. So is there any possibility to actually curtail this beast once it's been unleashed, to actually abolish these powers?
Oh, sure. Sure, it would really be pretty easy to do that simply by going into the NSA databases and eliminating anybody in there and any data about them if they didn't have a warrant, just with justified by probable cause, which is stated in the Fourth Amendment, and you have to abide by that. Otherwise, you erase and purge their data. That would be a simple thing to do. Once you purge the data, no one in government has a chance to be able to look at it, so they can't abuse it. That's the easiest thing to do. The other part is to unfund them.
Is there
unfund at least the greatest part of their collection.
Mr. Binney, is there any possibility that President Trump would be able to present this information to the public? Is there any possibility that could happen?
Yes. I mean, he could absolutely. He's the only one who could do that, by the way. He can declassify anything in government. He can do any of that. And I would point back to John Fitzgerald Kennedy when he declassified the U-2 photographs of the Russian missiles in Cuba, and then Ronald Reagan when he declassified the Japanese collection of the air-to-ground control of the Russian fighter that shot down the Korean airline. Those were all acts of declassification by the president, and he is authorized to do that. If he thinks it's important enough to do, to make it publicly known, then he has the authority and the right to do it.
Mr. Binney, thank you for your courage, and thank you for loving your neighbor as yourself. You've been listening to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gornoski. Godspeed.
Hi, this is David Gornoski, founder of A Neighbor's Choice. A Neighbor's Choice is sponsored by people just like you, making weekly or monthly contributions to support the development of this show, which is dedicated to introducing Jesus' personhood revolution to the broader public. Visit www.aneighborschoice.com, click on Contribute, and start your monthly pledge today. We appreciate